I used to think loneliness was silence, but silence has a shape. It curls into your chest, spreads behind your eyes, and settles deep where no one sees. The tennis ball hit the net and rolled toward my feet. I didn't even notice until Douglas called my name. Elena. His voice was kind, concerned. I blinked, shook myself back into the game. We were playing in the yard behind the house. The sun was soft, gold melting over the lawn like honey. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and sweat. Douglas was sweating too, his white polo sticking to his back. He was trying hard today. Maybe he felt it too, the weight. That something was slipping between us, slow and quiet. I adjusted my grip on the racket, but my eyes, they flicked, not toward the ball, toward Jesse. He was working out near the porch, shirt off, lifting weights like it cost him nothing. Sunlight caught on his skin, outlining every move like sculpture. He was 24, lean, fluid, confident, without effort. That kind of body doesn't happen after 40. That kind of presence doesn't come with comfort. Douglas served, I returned, but barely. My breath came fast, not from exertion. Jesse looked up just for a second. "You've still got it," he said. I smiled too quickly. "Just trying to keep up," I answered, but my voice sounded thinner than it should have. We kept playing, rallying longer now. Douglas was surprisingly agile today, but I wasn't watching him anymore. I was chasing the ball while chasing something else entirely, something I couldn't name, or didn't dare to later. When we stopped to rest, Douglas went inside to shower. I lingered on the patio, towel slung around my neck. Jesse sat on the porch steps, wiping his face with the hem of his shirt. "You tired?" he asked. "A bit," I said. He nodded. "You still move better than most people half your age." A compliment, too casual, too sharp. I drank water and let the coolness settle behind my teeth. "That's generous." He shrugged. "It's true." There was silence. Not awkward, not quite, but charged, the kind of quiet that hangs between two people when too much remains unspoken. I stood to leave. He brushed past me, accidental, maybe. His skin was warm, my breath caught inside. The house was cool and dim. I passed Douglas in the hallway. He smiled, kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted wine with dinner. I said yes, but I wasn't listening. Upstairs, I changed out of my tennis clothes and stood in front of the mirror for too long. There were new lines at the corners of my eyes, my collarbones sharper than they used to be. I'd lost weight. I pulled on a loose sweater and walked downstairs again. Jesse was in the kitchen now, opening a protein bar. He offered me half. I declined. "You and Doug looked good out there," he said. "You're solid together." "Thanks." It came out quieter than I meant. "Really, you're lucky. He really loves you." I didn't know how to respond to that. He leaned back against the counter. "Not everyone gets that kind of steady love, you know." I nodded. "I do. But steady love doesn't always reach the corners." There it was again, that silence, thick, not empty. My hands trembled slightly as I filled a glass of water. He noticed. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't teasing. He was watching carefully, attentively, too much. I took a step back. Anyway, I said, my voice light, fake. I should check on dinner. He smiled. Let me know if you ever want a rematch. He left. His scent stayed behind, something clean, sharp, familiar now. I stood alone in that kitchen, both grateful and devastated he was gone. I used to think loneliness was silence, but silence isn't quiet. It hums, it builds. It scrapes against your skin like wind through a crack in the window you keep forgetting to fix. And then one day, it settles in your bones, and you realize what you miss isn't noise. It's being seen. The tennis ball hit the net again. Douglas didn't say anything this time, but I caught the slight shift in his stance. Not frustration, concern. He was always kind that way. I cleared my throat and forced a smile. Sorry, I said, jogging to retrieve the ball. Guess I'm off today. He's still beating me, he chuckled, wiping his brow with a towel. We'd been out there for half an hour. The sun was beginning to dip behind the pine trees at the back of the yard, drenching everything in gold. My shirt clung to me, my calves ached. But it wasn't the game wearing me out. It was Jesse. He was about 20 feet away, near the porch, a pair of dumbbells in each hand, no shirt, wireless earbuds in-focused, rhythmic. The movement of his body was like some silent choreography. I couldn't look away from every line taught, every rep exact. And every breath he took drew something unsteady in me. He looked nothing like Douglas. That struck me sometimes. Same jawline, maybe. But Jesse was younger, darker, sharper. His energy was all tension and coiled heat. I tried not to stare, failed. Ready? Douglas asked. I turned quickly and nodded. We rallied for a few more minutes. The ball bounced. Shoes scraped the court. But I was playing on autopilot. My eyes, traitorous things, kept sliding back. At one point, Jesse caught me watching, just a glance. His mouth curved, almost a smile. I missed the ball completely, Douglas laughed. That one was mine, my serve. Right, I muttered, forcing a laugh of my own. We wrapped up soon after. Douglas headed inside for a shower. I lingered near the bench, stretching, wiping the back of my neck with my towel. Still undefeated, Jesse's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him stepping up onto the patio, sweat glistening on his collarbone, towel over his shoulder. Barely, I said, my throat dry. He's getting better. He smirked. You're just fast. I shrugged, trying to stay ahead of old age. He cocked his head, eyes scanning me in a way that made my skin buzz. You don't look old. I felt something press into my chest, an ache, slow and deep. Thanks, I murmured. I guess I needed that today. You look good, he added, quiet, casual, not casual. I looked away. We stood there, the golden light slanting across the porch, painting everything in softness. He leaned against the railing, muscles still taut, breathing steady. I could hear it, or maybe I imagined it. I'm gonna grab some water, he said, brushing past me to the door. The space between us felt thick when he moved. I stepped aside, but the warmth of him lingered longer than it should have inside the house. Everything felt cooler, dimmer. I went straight to the kitchen and opened the fridge. The chill helped. Jesse joined me a moment later. "You want one?" he asked, holding up a bottle. "I'm okay," I said. He opened it, took a long sip, then leaned against the counter, watching me. "You okay?" His tone was gentler now, almost protective. I nodded too fast. "Just tired." He didn't press, just looked. Then he smiled again, small, unreadable, and walked away. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, hearing the echo of his footsteps fade upstairs. And I realized I hadn't thought of Douglas once in the last 15 minutes. The next morning, I found Jesse already in the kitchen, barefoot, shirtless, leaning over the counter, while the toaster clicked behind him. The smell of coffee filled the room, strong, bitter, grounding. "Morning," he said, eyes flicking toward me. "Morning," I answered, softer than I meant. He reached into the cabinet and pulled down a mug. "Want some?" "Sure." I sat at the island, fingers curling around the edge of the marble. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was familiar now, like a thread stretched taut, but not yet snapping. He slid the mug across to me. "You sleep okay?" I did. It was a lie. I tossed and turned. The sheets wrapped too tightly around my legs, the room too warm. "You?" I asked. He shrugged. "Eventually." We didn't speak again until the toast popped. After breakfast, Douglas came down, cheerful and distracted, talking about the new community garden opening near the library. He asked Jesse if he'd like to volunteer. Jesse smiled politely, but didn't commit. I watched him as Douglas talked, watched the way his jaw clenched and unclenched as he chewed, the way his forearm flexed around the coffee mug. These were things I shouldn't notice, but I did constantly. That afternoon, Douglas had a chiropractor appointment, and I stayed home. Laundry, emails, small domestic rituals. Jesse stayed too, working on something in the garage. Music drifting in and out through the cracked door. At one point, I walked past and found him shirtless again, hunched over a bench, adjusting something on his bike. His back glistened with sweat. Muscles moved like liquid beneath his skin. He looked up. "Need something?" I blinked, just passing through. He grinned. "You always walk that quietly." "Maybe." "Well, you almost scared the life out of me." I laughed. He stood, grabbing a towel. "You ever fix a chain on one of these?" he asked. "Not since college." He tilted his head. "I'd love to see that." His tone was teasing, but his eyes weren't. That evening, Douglas suggested we watch a movie together. Jesse joined us, sitting on the floor with a pillow. I sat on the couch beside Douglas. I couldn't focus on the screen, not with Jesse 3 feet away, not with the occasional glance he threw over his shoulder, or the way he leaned back, arms draped behind him. Halfway through, Douglas dozed off. Jesse and I exchanged a glance. I felt myself flush. When the movie ended, Jesse stood, stretched, and let out a soft sigh. "Good night," he said, his eyes lingering a little longer than they should have. "Night," I replied, barely audible. Upstairs, I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, then rolled over, My hand brushed Douglas's arm. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. I got up, padded down the hallway, and stopped outside Jesse's door. It was closed. A sliver of light spilled from beneath. I didn't knock. I didn't move. I just stood there, listening. I told myself to go back. But I stayed. One more breath, then one more eventually. I turned and slipped back into my room. My dreams were scattered, flickering images. A backyard, water running over my skin. A shadow stepping too close, his voice in the dark, low and steady. I woke with a jolt, the sheets damp with sweat. Morning came harsh and bright. Jesse was already gone for a run when I reached the kitchen. I stood at the window with my coffee, watching the wind ripple the trees. He came back just as I finished loading the dishwasher, shirt soaked, chest rising fast. "Hey," he said, wiping his face. "You okay?" I nodded. "Didn't see you last night after the movie." I glanced at him. "Just went to bed early." He tilted his head, studying me. "You sure you're okay?" I smiled. But inside, something was shifting, because the way he looked at me, it wasn't polite. It wasn't sun-like. It was something else. And I didn't know whether to run from it or let it burn. It started with glances, nothing dramatic, nothing anyone would call out loud. But they lingered. The morning sun poured through the windows as I stood at the kitchen sink rinsing dishes. I felt it before I saw it, his eyes on me, not a look of accident or idle thought. Jesse was watching. And when I turned, he didn't look away. Instead, he smiled, not wide, not innocent. The kind of smile that knows it's being seen. "Need help with that?" "No, I'm almost done." He nodded, then stepped closer anyway. He picked up a dish towel and began drying. Close enough I could smell the faint trace of his cologne, something crisp and woody. I handed him a plate. Our fingers brushed. He didn't flinch. Neither did I, but my breath caught. Just a fraction. Enough for me to notice. Enough for him to notice. Douglas was out shopping that day. I found myself organizing the books in the living room, not because they needed it, because I needed something to do with my hands. Jesse wandered in. "You always alphabetize fiction?" he asked. "I try." "That's intense." He crouched beside me and reached for a novel I hadn't touched in years. "This any good?" "I liked it years ago." He flipped it open, read a line, smiled. "You remember this?" He read the sentence aloud. A quote about desire, about memory lingering where it shouldn't. The silence after was thick. He looked at me. "That line feels dangerous." "It is," I said quietly. Our eyes met. I looked away first. Later, I went upstairs to change sheets in the guest room, but I couldn't focus. The bed creaked under my knees as I smoothed the corners. The sunlight came in low and warm, casting long stripes across the floor. I stood there too long, hands still, breath shallow. That night, Jesse knocked on my door just once. I opened it. He stood there holding my phone. "You left this downstairs." "Thank you." He didn't leave. He didn't speak. I stepped back. Not an invitation. Not exactly, just a reaction. A breath pulled too deep. He didn't come in. But his eyes did. They searched my face like a question. I took the phone from him, and our fingers touched again longer this time. He left. The hallway swallowed his footsteps. I closed the door softly, but my hand lingered on the handle. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long while, staring at nothing. That evening, during dinner, Douglas asked me if I wanted to go to the new gallery opening next week. I said yes. I smiled. I looked at him. But something inside me pulled the other way, something already turning toward a different door. When Jesse stood to clear the plates, he looked at me. A silent exchange. The same question neither of us dared say out loud. After Douglas went to bed, I sat in the living room, lights dim, book in my lap. But the words blurred. Jesse passed by, shirt damp from his evening run. He didn't stop, just said, "Night, Elena." My name on his tongue sounded unfamiliar, not motherly, not familial. I whispered, "Good night," long after he was gone. I went to bed, turned off the light, and let the dark settle over me like a second skin. And in the silence, I felt every cell of my body listening for footsteps, for a breath, for anything that would make the ache inside me feel real. The idea came to me while folding towels, something so small, so ordinary. I needed a reason, something harmless, believable. I waited until Douglas left for his Thursday afternoon book club. Jesse was in the garage, tinkering with his bike again. I opened my bedroom windows, pulled the blinds halfway, and moved a chair an inch to the left, then back again. When I heard the front door shut, I stood in the hallway, my palms damp. "Jesse," I called. He appeared a moment later, wiping his hands with a rag. "Yeah, I could use your help for a minute in my room." He didn't answer right away. His eyes searched mine. Then he nodded, "Sure." I stepped aside. He followed me in. The air was warmer than I expected. Or maybe that was just me. "So," he said, looking around, "what are we rearranging?" "I don't know," I said. "Something feels off, maybe the dresser." He glanced toward it. "It looks fine." "Still," I said, shrugging, "would you mind?" He walked over, rolled up his sleeves. His forearms caught the light. "No problem." I moved toward the bookshelf, pretending to clear space. Jesse lifted the dresser with ease, angling it slightly. "Here, maybe a little more." He adjusted it again. We did that for a while, sliding, shifting, stopping to consider. The layout ended up nearly the same. It didn't matter. I just needed time. I handed him a small vase for the nightstand. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us said anything. When we finished, I sat on the edge of the bed. He leaned against the dresser, arms crossed. "You happy with it now?" "I think so," I said. "Good, you were kinda intense about it." I smiled. "Sorry, I've been restless lately." He tilted his head. "You okay?" I hesitated. "Just one of those moods." There was a pause. It filled the room like smoke. I looked up at him. "You want to sit for a second?" He raised an eyebrow. "Sure." He sat in the chair near the bed, legs spread slightly, elbows on his knees. I watched him for a moment, then stood. "You must be sore from the gym," I said. "Want a quick shoulder rub?" He blinked. "That's okay." Come on, I said, stepping behind him. It's the least I can do. He didn't argue again. I placed my hands on his shoulders gently. At first, just light pressure, muscle beneath warm skin, steady breath. I focused on the rhythm, press, release, press, trying not to think too much. His breathing slowed. I felt it shift, the way the air changed between us. It wasn't the touch. It was the silence that wrapped around it. A pulse, a current. He leaned slightly back, not into me, but not away either. The connection wasn't in movement. It was in the stillness. Then he exhaled, low, deliberate. And that breath found its way into me like smoke, like something that lingered after fire. I let my hands fall. He didn't move. We stayed like that for a moment, suspended in something neither of us could name. Then his phone rang, a shrill interruption. He glanced at the screen. Mara, he said. Voice tight, he stood, stepped aside, answered. Hey. I sat back down on the bed, hands folded in my lap, heart racing too fast. His tone changed, softer, calmer. Words I couldn't hear clearly, but I didn't need to. He paced slowly. Back turned to me. I stared at the floor, at the grain of the wood, at the dust gathered in corners I hadn't cleaned. He said something about her coming over, that she wasn't feeling great, that he wanted to be there for her. And then he invited her. I stood before I could stop myself. What? I said, too sharp. He turned, surprised. You're inviting her over? He blinked. She needs someone. Now, he frowned. Yeah, is that a problem? I didn't answer. I couldn't explain why it was, not without saying something I couldn't take back. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, I need to be with her right now. I nodded, too quickly. Of course you should. But it felt like something vital had been pulled from my chest. He hesitated in the doorway. You sure you're okay? I'm fine, I lied. And he was gone. The doorbell rang 20 minutes later. I was still in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter, breathing shallow. Jessie answered. I heard the door creak open, the soft rise of her voice, Mara. She laughed at something he said. Then the murmur of footsteps, the thud of her bag being set down. I wiped my hands on a dish towel I didn't need when they walked in. I was already pouring water into glasses. Elena, Mara said brightly, her tone too sweet. It's so good to see you. You too, I said, turning with a smile too tight at the corners. You look lovely. She did, tan skin, messy ponytail, a little flushed from the walk. Her eyes flicked around the room, taking it in, searching for something. Jessie moved past me toward the fridge. Want something cold? Water's fine, she said, glancing at him, then at me again. Your house always smells like vanilla and lemon. It's comforting. It's just the candles, I said. I like the quiet scents. We stood in silence longer than we should have. I handed her a glass. Our fingers didn't touch, but they could have. We sat. She and Jessie curled up on the couch, close, the way couples do when they don't realize how close they've become. Or maybe when they want to remind someone else how close they are. I watched them without meaning to. Mara's laugh floated easily. Her hand touched his arm more than once. Jesse didn't pull away. He caught me watching once, just once, and his gaze held not long, not obvious, but real. I looked away, pretended to sip my water. "Douglas around?" Mara asked. "He's at a friend's place, chess night." "Nice," she said. Eyes settling on Jesse's shoulder, she leaned into him, and for a moment, it felt like she forgot I was in the room. I stood. "I'll clear the table." "You don't have to," Jesse started. "It's fine," I said in the kitchen. I moved slowly, wiped surfaces that didn't need wiping. Let the hum of their voices fill the background like static. And then, suddenly, it wasn't just voices. She giggled. A different sound this time, throatier, soft. Then silence. I turned on the faucet, ran cold water over my hands, watched it spiral down the drain. The hallway light flickered once as someone moved past. Footsteps up the stairs. 2 sets. My breath caught. I didn't realize I was holding it until I heard the door click shut. The house swallowed the sound. I stood there, alone, the silence stretching wide and sharp. My feet moved before my mind did up the stairs. Down the hallway, I paused outside Jesse's room. There was no laughter now, just quiet. And something else, something thick. I leaned closer, then I heard it, his voice low, soft, and hers, answering the language of closeness. Too muffled to make out, too clear to deny, without thinking. I raised my hand and knocked, silence inside, then rustling. The door opened. Jesse stood there, barefoot, hair tousled. "Elena," he said, startled. "I'm sorry," I said. I needed to ask something." Mara appeared behind him, her expression confused. "What's going on?" she asked. "I had a leak in my bathroom sink," I lied. "Thought Jesse could help." Jesse didn't question it. "Sure," he said, stepping out into the hall. "Let me grab my tools." Mara folded her arms. "Really, now?" "It won't take long," Jesse replied. Not looking at her, he followed me down the hall. We didn't speak, not until we reached the bathroom. I closed the door behind us. "You okay?" he asked. "I shouldn't have interrupted," I said. "You didn't." I looked at him, at the small flecks of light catching in his eyes. I thought I was past this," I whispered. "But I'm not." His shoulders rose and fell. He said nothing. But something in his eyes flickered, not surprise, not guilt, just awareness. We stood there, inches apart. The air between us felt suspended, not warm, not cold, just charged. From the hallway, I heard Mara's footsteps. They paused outside. "I should go back," he said. I nodded, but I didn't move. And neither did he. The next day, the house was quiet. Douglas had gone out early for a morning hike with his old college friends, the kind of thing he did often now, as if reconnecting with nature might also reconnect something inside him. I envied that peace. Jesse and Mara stayed in. I could hear them moving around upstairs, doors opening, water running, laughter, sometimes low and drifting. I busied myself in the kitchen, slicing fruit with slow precision, every movement deliberate, every sound too loud in the stillness. Then I heard it again, Mara's laugh, clear and full, Then a quiet hush, a pause long enough to imagine more. I turned off the music playing in the background and walked upstairs without meaning to. Halfway up, I stopped. Their door wasn't fully shut. A sliver of space remained. I couldn't see them, but I could feel the heat from the room, like something alive pulsing through the floorboards. I raised my hand, knocked once. The laughter stopped. A second later, the door creaked open. Jessie stood there, eyes wide but unreadable. "Elena." "Sorry," I said. Something's wrong with the faucet in the guest bath." He blinked. "Now, yes, it's leaking." Behind him, Mara sat on the bed, her arms crossed. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. "I'll be quick," Jessie said, stepping past me. We walked to the bathroom without a word. My heart beat so loud it felt like it might echo down the hallway. Inside, I turned on the sink, just enough for it to make a soft drip. A lie that sounded almost real. Jessie knelt down, opened the cabinet, pretended to inspect something. I stood beside him, arms crossed, chest tight. "She's suspicious," I said. He paused, then looked up at me. "I know." I leaned against the doorframe. "Because she's smart." He straightened, closed the cabinet. "What are we doing?" he asked, voice low. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." There was a long pause, the kind where breath becomes heavier than sound. Then came her voice from the hallway. "Is everything okay in there?" Jessie didn't look toward the door. "We're good," he called. But we weren't. He turned off the water, wiped his hands on a towel, and stepped closer, not touching, just near enough that the air felt altered. "I thought about yesterday," he said. I nodded. "So did I." Outside the door, footsteps retreated. We stood there, not speaking, not breathing properly. The silence twisted around us like vines. I reached for the faucet again. "Let water run." The sound helped. "What do you want me to do, Elena?" he asked. "I don't know what I want," I whispered. He stepped even closer, his voice a breath now. "That's not true." And for a moment, nothing else existed but the space between us, the hum beneath the surface, the invisible thread pulling tighter. But then the front door opened. Douglas's voice echoed from downstairs. "I'm home." The sound broke whatever spell had been cast. Jessie blinked, stepped back. His chest rose sharply. I turned off the water. We left the bathroom. Mara stood at the end of the hall, arms still folded, gaze sharp. Douglas appeared from around the corner, smiling. "Everything all right?" he asked. I nodded. "Just a small leak," I said. "Handled it," Jessie added quickly. Douglas kissed my cheek and walked toward the kitchen, humming something tuneless. Mara didn't move. She looked at Jessie, then at me. Then she turned and went back into his room, closing the door behind her. Jessie and I stood in the hallway. His eyes found mine again, and in them I saw both the question and the answer we couldn't voice. The air in the house felt different after that. Mara stayed longer than usual. Her presence was deliberate now, lingering touches, loud laughter, constant nearness to Jessie. She moved through the kitchen like she belonged there. And maybe she did. I couldn't blame her for marking territory. I would have done the same. But Jessie Jesse had grown quiet. His eyes lingered in strange places, corners, shadows, me. And there were moments, brief and sharp, when we crossed paths, and he looked like he wanted to say something, but never did. One evening, after Douglas had gone out to a neighbor's poker night, I found them in the living room. Candlelight flickered across the walls. A playlist of soft acoustic songs played low. Mara turned to me as I walked in. "Elena," she said, her voice smooth, measured, "we were thinking of doing something different tonight." "Oh," she glanced at Jesse. "Something honest." I didn't move. Jesse cleared his throat. "We've been talking about lines and gray areas." I looked between them. "And I think we all know there's something going on," Mara said. "We feel it, all of us." The silence was too loud. "I don't want secrets," she continued. "But I also don't want to lose what I have with Jesse." He didn't speak. She leaned forward. "So maybe we just stop pretending, acknowledge the tension, and figure out what to do with it." I sat slowly. "You're suggesting what, exactly?" "Exploring it, with boundaries, with truth, all of us." I laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. "You're serious?" "I am," she said, voice firmer now. "This thing has been building, and it's eating all of us alive." I turned to Jesse. "Is that what you want?" He looked down at his hands, then at me. "I don't know what I want. I just know this doesn't feel wrong when I'm near you." Mara nodded. "Then let's not make it wrong." I looked around the room, the dim lighting, the soft hum of the music, the scent of something floral and slow burning. And I felt it again, that pull, that ache. "If we're doing this," I said quietly, "we set the scene." Mara tilted her head. "You mean like atmosphere matters," I replied. "So does intention." We moved slowly, adjusted the lighting, turned the music down, burned a candle I hadn't touched in months. I offered wine. Mara accepted. Jesse didn't. He sat between us now, silent, the space around him humming. It wasn't about touching, not yet. It was about gaze, about weight, about a shift in gravity. We talked. Not about what we were doing, but about memories, regrets, what it felt like to need something you shouldn't want. Mara watched me as I spoke. Her face softened. Jesse said little, but his eyes never left mine. The room grew warmer, time blurred. And then I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Jesse's breath changed. None of us moved further. But none of us needed to. The air between us did all the speaking. The way she leaned toward him, the way he leaned slightly toward me. The triangle was silent, but it pulsed, electric, impossible to ignore. And then the front door opened. A voice called from the entryway. "Elena." "Douglas." My blood went cold. I shot up from the couch. Jesse stood fast. Mara's mouth parted, shock blooming across her face. Douglas appeared in the doorway, holding a newspaper, his expression lit with excitement. But it faded in seconds. He looked at Jesse, at Mara, at me, at the wine, the lighting, the space between us. "What's going on?" No one spoke. The silence, once electric, now turned suffocating. Douglas blinked. "Elena." I opened my mouth, but nothing came. He took a step forward. Is this something I should understand? Still no words. Only Jesse's voice. Finally, Dad. It's not what it looks like. But it was. And we all knew it. Douglas stood frozen in the doorway, the newspaper slipping from his hand with a soft thud that echoed louder than it should have. His eyes darted between us, me, Jesse, Mara, and settled back on me. Elena, he said, and my name cracked in his mouth like it tasted wrong. I stepped forward, hands slightly raised. Douglas. He shook his head. Jesse moved next. It's not. Douglas cut him off. You dare. Mara stood, smoothing her dress, lips parted but silent. Her face was flushed with something between guilt and disbelief. She glanced at Jesse, then at me, then back at Douglas. The silence between us shattered all at once. Douglas's voice rose. I walk in here with something to celebrate. A little nothing, some community article about my old project being revived. And I thought, how nice, how rare, something to share with the people I trust, the people I love. And this is what I come home to. It's not what it seems, I said quietly. No, he snapped. Because from where I'm standing, it seems like I walked into a moment that doesn't belong to any of you. His breathing was loud now, unsteady. His hands curled into fists at his sides. I trusted you, he whispered. Jesse took a step toward him, but Douglas stepped back. I didn't mean for it to get like this, Jesse said. No, Douglas muttered. You just let it. I opened my mouth, but again, nothing. My voice failed me. What could I possibly say? I can't. Douglas turned away. I can't look at any of you right now. And then he left. The door slammed. The walls seemed to tremble for a moment. No one moved. Mara was the first to speak. What the hell just happened? Jesse turned to her. You said we should be honest. Honest, she scoffed. That was destruction. I didn't mean whatever that was. You were a part of it too, he said. Not like this, she snapped. I thought we were exploring something, not burning down the house. She grabbed her bag, her movements stiff and sharp. Follow me, she said to no one in particular. I'm not ready to decide who disgusts me more. She walked out. The front door opened and closed again, quieter this time. Then it was just me and Jesse. He stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, staring at the wall where the candlelight had once flickered. I'm sorry, he said. I sat down slowly, my legs shaking. Why did you say nothing? I asked. I didn't know how. I closed my eyes. The air smelled like melted wax and regret. This was my fault, I said. No, he said. It was ours. But I wasn't ready to believe that. He sat beside me, and for a while, neither of us moved. The music had stopped long ago. The silence was heavier now, not electric, not full of longing, just the weight of something broken, something you can't take back. Eventually, Jesse stood. I think I need to leave for a while. I nodded. I don't know where I'm going, he said. That's okay. He looked down at me. Will you be all right? I didn't answer. I didn't know. He left quietly. No door slammed this time. I was alone. The room, once warm and pulsing, felt like a cold stage after the curtain falls. The newspaper still lay on the floor. I picked it up, hands trembling, and smoothed the page where Douglas's name was printed. He had been proud, just for a moment. And I had ruined it. The house became a shell after they left. I stopped opening the curtains in the morning. The light felt too honest, too invasive. I moved through the rooms like a guest in someone else's life, touching objects that didn't quite belong to me anymore. Jessie was gone. No text, no call, just silence. A silence that stretched wider with each day. Mara hadn't come back either. Her perfume no longer clung to the hall. Her voice no longer bounced off the walls. And Douglas, his absence was the loudest. His keys no longer sat in the bowl near the door. His books stayed on the nightstand, unopened. His coffee mug remained upside down in the drying rack. One morning, I found myself sitting in the kitchen long after my tea had gone cold. The sky outside was soft, overcast, the kind of gray that didn't threaten rain, but held everything in limbo. I stared at the fridge, at the photo magnets still clinging stubbornly. One was from our road trip to Bend, another from a charity gala, smiling faces, safe, posed memories. I pulled them down one by one. At night, I dreamed of voices, Jessie calling my name from another room, Douglas whispering something I couldn't quite hear. I'd wake up with my heart in my throat, and no one beside me. The yoga studio called. They asked if I was ready to return to teaching. I said yes before I knew why. Maybe because I needed a version of myself to return to. My first class back was half full, mostly women in their 30s and 40s. Quiet, focused, they moved through the poses carefully. I spoke with more stillness than usual. My voice wasn't soft, it was hollow. After class, one of the new students approached. Her name was Rachel. She looked about 25, open face, curious eyes. "That was beautiful," she said. It felt like more than just stretching. "Thank you," I said, unsure how to hold the compliment. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Do you ever feel like you've lost your way completely, like you're someone else's shadow?" I stared at her. And in that moment, I didn't see her, I saw myself. Years ago, young, uncertain, waiting for someone to give her permission to be seen. I said, "Yes," more often than I'd like to admit. She smiled, a little sad. "Well, you don't look like a shadow today." That night, I stood in front of the mirror and studied my reflection the way I used to study other people, detached, curious. My eyes looked tired, older. But there was something else there, something like honesty. I opened the drawer where I kept the letters I never sent, pulled out the one addressed to Jessie. It was short, unfolded in my hands like something ancient. I don't know if what we had was love, but I know it was real. And real things leave marks. I didn't seal it. I didn't tear it up either. I placed it back in the drawer. Later, I walked to the porch, barefoot. The night air was cool, clean. I watched the wind stir the trees and wondered how long it would take to feel whole again. Or if that was ever the goal. I didn't expect to hear from him again. The message came on a quiet afternoon. I was folding laundry, something grounding, something simple. My phone buzzed once. I picked it up without looking, expecting spam or silence. But it was him. I hope you're okay. No punctuation, no name, no need. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I put the phone down and kept folding socks, a shirt, a towel. I didn't answer. Some things are better left hanging in the air, like a question that doesn't need an answer to be true. A few days later, a small brown envelope arrived in the mailbox. No return address. Inside, a book, Douglas's book, the one he always kept beside his chair, dog-eared and underlined, full of quiet thoughts and questions that didn't beg to be solved. Tucked inside was a note, handwritten in his steady, unhurried script. Be the person who once taught me how to breathe. I read it twice, then again. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there with the paper in my lap, the stillness wrapping around me like a loose shawl. That evening, I lit a candle in the living room, the same one from that night. I let the scent fill the air, faint lavender, vanilla barely there. I opened the windows, let the breeze come through, soft and slow. I didn't think of Jesse, not in the way I had before. I thought of the silence that followed him, the way it had shaped the corners of my life, the way it had finally let go. I wrote a letter to Mara. I didn't apologize. I told her the truth, that sometimes people cross lines not because they want to hurt, but because they're starving to feel alive. And sometimes, when you finally see yourself clearly in someone else's eyes, you forget who you are just for a moment, just long enough to fall. Then you remember, I didn't mail it. I placed it on the windowsill, under a small rock. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the floor. I turned off the lights, sat on the rug, closed my eyes. I breathed in and let go. The house didn't feel haunted anymore, not by voices or mistakes or almosts, just stillness. I realized wasn't emptiness, it was space, room enough to begin again. Outside, the last light of day melted into night, and for the first time in months, the silence didn't scare me anymore.